So today our theme is planning for the inevitable. And I am really excited to have two nationally recognized professional speakers here who are transitioning into the death doula space. And our first speaker this morning is Dr. Kimberly Harms. She's an internationally recognized speaker and award-winning author, and she is going to talk to us about let's get ready, everything you need to know before you go. So big round of applause for Dr. Kimberly Harms. And we're both Terps.
Go Terp. Maryland Terrapins, University of Maryland. We have big, although my husband's high school mascot was a flower. They lived in Blooming Prairie, Minnesota, so they had flower power. They had flowers. So I guess there are some that are less vicious than Terps. So anyway, well, thank you. This is such a pleasure to be here. Kathy and I have kind of been on a journey together, and we were speakers in other areas, and we just become committed to this one, to this part of life. And I have had a few jobs in my time. I was a dentist by trade. My husband and I practiced together, and then my good hand had nerve damage to my drilling fingers, and I was told in one day at Mayo Clinic that I was done, so I had to get a new job there. And at that time, I became a grief counselor because that worked for me. And then a few years later, my daughter Hillary went into law, and she wanted me to help her with a law firm, so I became a civil mediator to help with. I helped dentists mediate things. And then my husband died 4 years ago, and I found myself in that strange place. He had been sick for a while. You know, after he died, and any of you that are widows know, you wake up and like, I'm all alone. I got married at 19, and I'm married for 44 years, and now I'm all alone, and nobody knows when I go to the grocery store where I am. I could die here, and nobody would know. Oh my God, please, because I'm all alone. You know, so I went through that, and I realized that I was between that kind of chasm between menopause and death. That's where we're at. And so I thought, well, what the heck do I do now? Because, you know, can't do dentistry. You know, I was taking care of my husband. I've got these. I fortunately have some grandchildren. Those are my focus right now. But you know, what do I do? Because actually, if I just took care of my grandchildren, I would be arrested for stalking because I would go, you know, I would go show up to their schools. Yeah. And that's kind of how I am. So I need to find something else. And I started researching. What do I do now? Because I really couldn't find. I'm getting Gail's books because I didn't know about Gail's books, but those are the perfect books I needed at the time. Where were you, Gail? And so I started studying and researching, and then we have a widows group, so we've written a couple of widows books. So I thought, well, maybe I just write a book about all the stuff we need to do. So I have it in one place, and I researched for about a year and a half, and it was so fascinating. This is such a fascinating topic, and then I got the book done, and during the writing of the book, I became a death doula because I thought, well, I got to figure out, I have to have some sort of education in death, so I became a death doula. And so the combination of grief counselor, civil mediator, and death doula have kind of come together for me to really, my goal in life right now is to help people prepare to die in a way that thinks about the emotional stability of the people they leave behind. I want to give my children a softer landing when I go. I don't want them to cheer, but that's soft. But I want them to have like a softer landing. And so that's been my purpose, and it's so fulfilling, you know, and especially when you're in this time where you're like, what the heck do I do now? I'm a widow, widow harms, you know, I have something that is, I think is given me a lot of passion, and I'm meeting people that we are strange people. People wonder what we do, right? You know, I was speaking on dentistry, right? And I said, no, I don't speak on dentistry anymore. I speak about death, and people are like, whoa, you know. So they kind of think there's a problem, but anyway, there isn't. So I'm going to talk today. My book kind of goes over everything you need to know to try to get your kids and your family, whoever you leave behind, a softer landing. So, there's my book, right. So, there we go. Thank you. So, we're going to get started. We have over 40 million minutes in the United States to live. That's the average life expectancy, 40 million minutes. And every minute represents a memory, or an impression, or a legacy. But eventually, as we all know, our minutes run out. And all that's left of our story is in the hearts and mind of the people we leave behind. So why don't we focus on leaving them behind a great legacy of happiness, a legacy of strong bonds, a legacy of less conflict. Wouldn't that be great if we focus our planning on making sure they're in good shape after we go? And so how many are familiar with the Harvard 80-year happiness study?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, everybody needs to know about this. So Harvard did an 80-year study where they studied people, and they were just men at the time, and they've since switched because that's kind of what they did. But they studied them, and they took they took poor people in Boston and graduates of Harvard who were not quite so poor in Boston, and they studied them over an 80-year period. And every year they analyzed their happiness level. And what they found was amazing, because their happiness level wasn't dependent on how much money you made. I know there's a certain level that you need to keep a roof over your head, but after that, it didn't matter. What mattered by far, without a question, was the quality of the relationships they developed. And so that is why, as we leave our children and our grandchildren and people behind us, we need to focus on the quality of their relationships. It's one of the best gifts we can give. Another thing that's been found recently is that being mentally resilient, the importance of resilience. I've had some suicides in my family. You'll hear about that tomorrow. But in my heart, I want to foster resilience, because I think many times when you feel that life can't go on, you're losing resilience. So I want to help my children and my grandchildren become more resilient, to be able to take the tough times and go forward. And it cuts your chances of dying within the next 10 years by 53%. So we need to get more resilient too, because I'm in that last quarter of my life, because I can do the math. I'm 68, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm in that last quarter. Imagine if I could extend it a couple of years, right? And I'm happy to know I'm in the last quarter, because I know I have to plan. The rest of you that are younger, you don't know if you're in the last quarter, because you don't know what's going to happen. I know, because the math is here, right? So you don't know. So, let's plan. Let's become resilient. Let's help ourselves become more resilient. Focus on building resilience within ourselves, but also within our children and our grandchildren. So how are we doing with this? How are we doing with building resilience? Well, not so good. Not so good. 57% of American families report conflict surrounding the death of a loved one. Now, how sad is that? How sad is that? Because now you're grieving the loss of your loved one, and then you're dealing with conflict with your family member that you really need to grieve the loss of your loved ones. And it's just a travesty, because it doesn't have to happen. We can plan things to reduce that number. Now, of course, there's always going to be people that don't get along, but we can reduce that number. And many times, and we all know situations where people didn't plan well, and it caused just tremendous friction. My nephew is working on a case within his own family right now, where his uncle died. His uncle had been living with a woman for 35 years in California, and there's no, what do you call it, marriage, long-term marriage, what's that word again? Common law, that's it, thank you very much. This is what happens when you're 68, you lose words. The common law marriage, there's no common law marriage here, so it's as if they were never married. But worse, if it can get worse, they adopted their sister's daughter when she was a baby, because the sister was a drug addict, and they adopted the sister's daughter. But they didn't officially adopt her. They took her into the house, and she didn't know that she was not adopted. She thought that the mother was the mother, and didn't know they weren't married, by the way. The mother was the mother, the father was the father. The father dies with a $5 million estate. Guess where it's going to?
The state.
It's going to the state first, and then it goes to the mother, the true mother of the daughter, the one that was a drug addict, and her sister, because they are the only living relatives.
Wow.
So,
What state is that?
it was California.
I'm not going there.
What the heck, 30 years. So imagine the friction, imagine the loss. Just because all along the way he could have planned, but he just didn't do it, and now he did not expect to leave the legacy he's leaving.
He probably didn't expect to die either.
He didn't expect to die, of course, and that's the whole point. He didn't expect to die. So, so what do? We've got you know, all of these things that need to be done, we need to do them like yesterday. But we couldn't have done them yesterday, so we need to do them now. So imagine your family after you die. Imagine your family, they're caught up in grief, they're sad, they're mourning, and then they have to go and find your stuff, right? And they gotta go find your will, and your trust, and your titles to your car, and all that stuff that we all went through, all of those of us who have lost someone. And they can't find them, right? Or worse yet, they don't exist, right? So here they are. This is a nightmare that your family is exposed to, right? And then they go through this legal and financial nightmare. And what does it do? It fosters confusion. It fosters anger. It fosters bitterness. And we all know that sometimes that bitterness lasts a lifetime. That's not the legacy you want to leave. So one of the things that getting your affairs put together, one of the things it does is it shows your love to your family. And I think that that's really important for us. We talked a lot about love, and it's just going to keep on going because that's what it's about, right? We talked about love. So there were 4 steps to clean up our mess, and I'm talking about our mess in general terms, and leave our children emotionally secure. What do we do? What are those 4 steps? Well, the first and second step, first step is build your legacy. The second step is to talk about grief and talk about death. We need to get our affairs in order, and we need to take care of all of our emotional baggage. We shouldn't leave anger, frustration, torn relationships when we die, because we know what that does to the person that's left behind. If they've got a bad relationship, it complicates the grief. Okay? So let's start getting our legacy. So what's your legacy? Your life is your legacy. Everybody here has a legacy, and it's every interaction we have with every person in our lives. That's our legacy. So why would a 68-year-old grandma with a queasy stomach and a fear of heights ride a roller coaster 6 times? Why would I do that? Because it's me. Exactly. You got it. You got it. Grandkids. I have 6 grandchildren, and I really feel my life that they're the most important legacy in my life are my grandchildren. We all have different legacies. We have different things put in front of us, but for me, it's these little pumpkins. And so they have all ridden on a roller coaster ride with me. I've got it done. Bucket list, check. I checked off my bucket list. I've done this. And I remind them that I've done it in case they forget. And this is mine. You can see how much fun I'm having right now. You can see I'm having a lot of fun. That's with my grandson Eric. I have a great time going down there. But I did it. I did it 6 times. And they remember that and they appreciate that. So what is the greatest legacy? There's one legacy that stands above it all. And I was in Rwanda. We have, my son passed away, and we have 65 Eric Harms Memorial Libraries in Rwanda. It just happened to happen. It just happened. I don't even know. I don't think it's a divine influence thing, but somehow here I am. So I've been to Rwanda quite a few times, and I was working with a group of widows. These are all widows. And the older people in Rwanda don't speak English. The younger people do, but the older people don't. And so all these group of widows were widowed during the genocide. So not only did they lose their husbands, they lost their entire families typically when their neighbors came over and killed them. So just imagine the horror, right? And I was working with them, I was talking about legacy. And they looked at me through an interpreter and said, well, we can't leave a legacy. We don't have any money. And I thought, okay. And then I thought, okay, maybe I could speak through some other translation. I could work through some other way to get them to understand that. And I said, well, do you guys have a faith? Do you have a faith? They all happen to be Christian. I happen to be Christian. So there's a tie right there, right? So I said, okay, so what legacy did Jesus live? And they said, how much money? How much money did Jesus leave? And of course they said, well, he didn't leave any money. What did he leave us? And of course they realized he left us love. And when I told that, when we kind of got that together, when we realized that was the time when we connected, and we had the best meeting ever. We had so much fun there. You can just see, look at the joy in their faces, look at the joy in their hearts. And these are people with absolutely nothing who lost their families in a genocide, and they can laugh and smile and have this wonderful time as they get together, because what they have found is that those relationships are what keep them going. So what we need to do, what we need to do, of course, is come to terms with our mortality we've been talking about. We have to come to terms with the fact that we're gonna die. And that's one of the problems, because nobody likes to think about it. We are in a culture where we can, if we work out and we eat the right foods and we do all these things, we're not gonna die. And if we die, it's a problem, right? And that's a problem with all of us. We just can't come to terms with our mortality. But we also have to talk about our mortality. We talk about what happens after we die. And I do that with my family. I talk, they don't necessarily want to hear it, but I talk about what I want to do, what's going to happen after I die. And I let my grandchildren know that, one day Nana's going to be gone too, just like Pop Pop. And it really helps them to kind of see, first of all, I keep Pop Pop alive in their hearts, but also they understand that at some point I'm going to die. The reason I talk to them is I think that they can become more resilient knowing this is going to happen. Because I think part of the problem when my husband died, no one had talked to them about, they were devastated. They had no idea that could happen. So I'm trying to educate them, and that we need to educate our families and let them know what we're doing with them. And of course, one of the things we need to educate them with, and we talked about this yesterday, was our healthcare directive, 5 wishes. That was a great seminar yesterday. And it's so very important that we have a healthcare directive. My husband gave that gift to me. He was in the hospital, and he was getting mad at me because he would not really tell the doctors the truth. When they came in, he'd say, "Oh yeah, I'm up walking around." I said, "Jim, no, you've been," and he'd get mad because I said, "Wait a minute, doctor, that's not the truth." And then he would get kind of angry with me with that. So we had to kind of figure out that he was dying, because they don't tell you he's dying. They don't tell you in the hospital he's dying. If I'd known he was dying, I'd take him home. But he was in the hospital. I was hoping he'd get better, but he was dying. So he said, "I want to go home. I want to go home." So had to arrange to get him home. We had the most wonderful hospice nurses ever. They were fabulous, and they came and just did such a great job. But he said, "I want to die at home." And so we made it possible for him to die at home. And so, as you know, with healthcare directives, we did this, talked about this yesterday. You can either do everything possible, or you can die at home. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want a ventilator? It's important for him to tell me that, because of course, even though he was clear that he wanted to die at home, we had the healthcare directive. One of my nephews called his last day and was like, "Oh, he was a doctor. Oh, you could get him back into the hospital. They could drain his lungs, and they could do this, and they could intubate." And Jim's like, "Absolutely not. This is not what I want. I want to die at home." And he goes, "Well, Uncle Jim, you can live a little longer." And he goes, "I don't want to live that way. I want to just die at home." He had the most peaceful 2 deaths. We'll talk about that a little bit later. He actually died twice. And it was the most peaceful death. He just was talking, and then he went, "Poof," just like that. He had the most peaceful death ever. And he did it on his terms. So leave your families a healthcare directive. This is so important. And we all are familiar with hospice, that there's no curative intent, but we're there to make people comfortable. And I'm so glad. In my healthcare directive, I'm like, get me over to hospice as quickly as possible when I'm going to go. So what are the family discussions? This is something nobody likes to talk about death, right? So how do we have a family discussion when nobody likes to talk about death? Well, what I do with my children. I said, what's going to be a planning for the future? Let's have a planning for the future. And let's have it on Mother's Day. I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. It's very difficult. So come on Mother's Day. Let's have a family discussion. And so we did. Yes. Guilt works. So anyway, so you have to prepare for a variety of responses. Discuss the healthcare directive. That's so important. Your legacy binder, we're going to talk a lot about the legacy binder and everything that's in there, your administrative team, who you're going to have take care of it, and what happens if a parent dies and is still living. This is something I think we need to talk about too, because we did talk about that when my husband was alive. My husband was very, very, very much of an extrovert, right? He loved people. He was the 12th of 14 children. He had people around him all the time. I'm kind of an introvert, so I can go both ways. But he's an extrovert. And we knew that if I went first, he would have to get remarried. He'd have to find somebody because he couldn't live alone. He knew it. We all knew it. The whole family knew it. So let's just call a spade, right? So what we did is we talked about it as a group. And I said, I just want to make one rule that, Jim, I don't want you looking for a new wife until after my funeral. Give me that time, at least. And then you can talk about it. And then, so after my funeral, and then the other thing was, my girls, who are both attorneys, said, well, Mom, what if he marries a young woman with 5 kids, and then he dies, and then everything is left to the 5 kids, because then she'll inherit it, because they're attorneys, they figure this out. So we had a cabin. We had a cabin up north, and that's what they wanted to keep if something happened. So we put in what we call the floozy clause in our trust. Floozy clause. And of course, he would marry a floozy, but it just, it feels good to call it a floozy before you die. But it's called a floozy clause. And the floozy clause says that if I died first, then the cabin would go to my children. It would be in their name. But my husband could live in that cabin his entire life. So therefore, if you marry a floozy and they lived in the cabin for his whole life, then when he died, it would go back to my kids, so they wouldn't worry about it. So you have to kind of adjust things, but I think that what we did by talking about it to Jim, if I had died first, would have avoided a lot of conflict, because everybody knew that we were planning for it. We took everything into consideration because we knew he would get married. And then how many families do we know who are troubled because a spouse gets remarried fairly quickly? How many families do that? And they're just people that need people, right? So this is one way to avoid that. Get a floozy clause, but don't call it floozy clause Emily. It's disrespectful. And I told him also he couldn't start planning for his new wife before I died, because he was starting, well, I wonder who I would marry. No, let's stop that. So and then if there's something unusual that's going to happen, make sure you discuss it as a family. And put the discussion in writing and on record, because people remember things differently in the same room, right? So just take your phone and record it, and then send it to everybody. And then after you die, if there's a question, they can just put the phone call on. So record it. Make sure you have it in writing. So what are the expectations? This is one of the things that causes a lot of conflict because of the expectations in our family. So what are the expectations in your family? Now my kids say, Mom, we don't need an inheritance. You just spend your money. Oh, we really, do they really mean that? I don't know, but it's nice to say to me, right? Just spend your money. We don't need yours. And that really is a very healthy way to look at it. I mean, I didn't get an inheritance. We had no money, and so there was nothing coming in, and then you live your life, and if something comes, it's a surprise, right? So that really is the healthiest way to think about it. The second way is where the expectations of the children match the expectations of the parents. But what happens if you end up in a nursing home, or you end up getting care? My grandmother was in a nursing home for 17 years. There was nothing left. And so you don't know the future. We don't know what's going to happen. My kids will get some inheritance if I die a regular death quickly. But if I need long-term care, that money's going to get worked through pretty quickly. So there might not be an inheritance. So even though you might have expectations, you don't know what the future is going to hold. What if the children have no idea what the parents' wishes are? And that happens a lot, and this is one of the major causes of confusion. Complicated family dynamics. Kathy Dempsey can tell you some good stories about that one. She's got a lot of complicated family dynamics that make it very, very difficult after you die to try to get things worked out. And because the expectations are different, especially if you have a blended family. You have a blended family, where does it, like, for instance, with that, the floozy clause, if Jim had died and the new wife inherited money, then how would that be divided up? I mean, those things are very difficult to figure out and understand, and cause lots and lots and lots of problems. So that's another reason that you need to really have that talk beforehand and record it. Many times the expectations of the children are different from the expectations of the parents. And right now, we baby boomers are like going to be having the greatest transformation of wealth to the next generation, right? And they think we're all millionaires, right? But they do. They think we have a house, money. But they fail again to think about what could happen in the future that might take that money away. Or if we go on a ski vacation or spend your kids' inheritance vacation, there might be less there if they do that. So it's important to understand that this can be a problem. You need to have these talks, and you need to let them know there might not be any, depending on what happens in the future. We can't predict, because some kids live their lives thinking, okay, when Mom dies, I'm going to inherit a lot of money. Now, first of all, I don't really want my kids to think that it's a good thing when I die. I mean, I would like to have a little bit of grief, a soft landing, but a little grief, but you don't want that to happen. And then this is what does happen, though. I have friends that are in long-term care who believe that the kids are just waiting for them to die because it's costing $10,000 a month. The kids are looking at their inheritance going down and down and down and down. And we don't like to talk about it, and the kids don't like to admit it, but we know that it's out there. So again, this is why it's important to have those discussions, work that kind of stuff out, bring it to the fore, and just say, there's no guarantee of an inheritance. We'll see what happens, because this happens all the time, and I think it's happening more and more because we as baby boomers are living longer than the last generation, but we're also living longer with long-term care. So it's costing us a lot more to live. So, I have a little, we're gonna give a little link at the end of the session, but I have a little four-part guide that's free on scheduling your family meeting, overcoming anxiety, using the right words, and follow up on scheduling your family discussion, because this is one of the hardest things I find that people have to do, is getting that discussion going. So we'll have that at the end. So, now I know that talking to your kids and your grandkids to help them be more resilient works. And the reason I know is because of Heidi. Heidi is my little granddaughter. And she came up to me a couple months ago at the table. She actually needs to go to the bathroom in this picture, but look at that. She's on the beach and doesn't want to go in, so she's like, okay, I'm gonna just. So anyway, but anyway, so when she came up to me and said, Nana, and she had this kind of sad look on her face. I said, Nana, and I said, yeah, Heidi, what? She goes, oh, Nana, if what happened to Pop happens to you. And I go, oh, Nana, okay, you mean if I were to die? She goes, oh, yeah, Nana, if you were to die. And I said, okay, go ahead, Heidi. What do you need to know? We're talking about this. She goes, oh, Nana, if you were to die, can we still go on the Disney cruise? And I said, yes, I want you to go on the Disney cruise. Every moment that you have joy, you are honoring me. I want you to flourish. Yes. So this really works, and that is proof. Little Heidi gave proof of what was going on. She's quite the character. Gave us proof. So one of the first things we do, and we're going to talk in detail tomorrow, is cleaning up your stuff.
Today.
We're going to talk today. Sorry. Today. Kathy's in charge of that one, but I just had to mention it because it's part of the whole package. Clean up your stuff because the kids don't want them. The kids don't want it. I love China. I love it. In fact, when I couldn't work in dentistry anymore and I needed something to do, I became a China painter because you can just work in China. So I don't only love China, but I have all these beautiful pieces that I've made that I wanted my children to inherit, and they're not really that crazy about it. So what happens? We have to adapt, right? The kids don't want our stuff, we have to adapt. So let's get rid of our stuff. Keep or donate. And Kathy's going to talk in detail about that tomorrow. Today. First thing is to get your will and trust established. So we're going to talk about the emotional needs of our family members, but in order to take care of the emotional needs, you've got to get your affairs in order, okay? Because you got to get the will, you got to get the trust, you got to get everything in order in a place where they're going to find it. That's the first step, and then also watch out for the emotional needs. So you can't, if you mess this up and you don't have a will, and your daughter thinks that she was your daughter and finds out that she's not, and the money goes to her aunt, this can be a problem. So it of course outlines your wishes, distribute your assets, who manages your estate, who the guardians are, all of that thing. Trust can add flexibility, so trusts are good. You just need to talk to a professional about that. And there's a lot of things. AARP has got a list of ways you can get wills done less expensively. Depending on what your situation is, you have to at least have one, but I really recommend going to a professional because it's so much better to invest the money up front for your personal care than to have the kids fight over it later on. So I would recommend that, but there are inexpensive ways to do that. And also you need, when you're doing your will and your trust, you need to make sure you're not predicting the future, because this happened in our family. Now this is my husband, this is Jim, right there, there's Jim, there's Mary, Judy, Sonia. He's the 12th of 14 children. This is my husband's family, these are brothers and sisters, parents in the middle. Now if you look at Sonia over there, Sonia was the second oldest. She was kind of a caretaker, and she lost her husband, she was a widow, she had no children, and she had decided she wanted to give a little bit of money to all of her brothers and sisters. She did not want to give them to our children. She wanted to give just to the brothers and sisters. She didn't have a lot of money, but she wanted to leave something, which was so kind of her. She didn't have to do that, but she wanted to do that. But she was also a planner, and she thought, Paul at the bottom there and Mary were both very ill at the time, and so she thought, well, they're going to die before me. So I don't really need to put them in the will because they're going to be dead before I go, because she wanted to make it simple, right? So she made the will out to go to everybody that she expected to be alive when she died, but she left out Paul and she left out Mary.
And they were both alive.
They're both alive. She was the first to go. She ended up getting cancer. She was a smoker and just denied any problems and didn't go to doctors, didn't believe in doctors, and she died of lung cancer. But she's an amazing woman, just a really amazing woman. And so when her Judy is the one that was planned her estate. She was the executor. So Judy, because she was the middle child, so when you're 14, Judy and Sue are in the middle, right? So Judy and Sue are the peacekeepers, right? They want to keep the oldest boy kind of causes trouble, but the two middle ones are the peacekeepers. And so Judy and Sue got together and said, well, we can't pass this out and leave Paul and Mary out, even though legally that's what they were supposed to do. So what they did is they just called everybody, and because it's a small family, and because it was not very much, it's a large family, but because it wasn't very much, the money was small, it really wasn't a lot of money, they called them all and said, well, can we just, instead of dividing it up 11 ways, can we divide it up 13 ways? And everybody said yes. So she just divided up 13 ways, probably illegal to do whatever she did, but she passed it all out and we were all fine. But it just goes to show you, had there been a conflict in that family, boy, that could have caused some really hard feelings, if that happened. But it happens to all of us. This is just happening every day to all of us. And also the cost for attorney's fees is much less than the cost to take care of it afterwards, not to mention any of the conflict that's involved. So what are the consequences of no will and trust? And one of the things we have to look at in our life, and I started looking at this differently, is there are consequences in our lives of doing nothing. We kind of think the consequences of doing things, but when we don't do things, there are a lot of consequences. So there's a lot of consequences to not doing your will or trust. So what are they? Well, the state takes control, and there's increased costs and delays, but mainly family disputes. I think for me, in my worldview, the worst thing are the family disputes, where the family members are no longer talking to each other after years and years and years and years. Because remember, Harvard says the key to happiness are those strong relationships. So you're increasing happiness by causing dispute between families. So when you write that will or the trust, what you're doing is you're leaving your family really the ultimate way to celebrate your memory and the ultimate way to come together. If it's written well, come together, and we'll talk later about letter of intent. So if there's some things that might not look even, coming together, bringing them together, and letting them celebrate that you've done that. So just think of your family looking like that when you're all done with your will, and what they might look if you don't do your will. It's not looking so good. So I'm recommending that everyone put together a legacy binder. We talked about there are people that already done that yesterday. People putting a legacy binder together, get a big fat binder, big rings, and then put everything in a page protector. And I put everything in there. I put my social security card, I put everything they're gonna need when I go. And then I put in just a little piece of Scotch tape on the top, and then it's an envelope. So it can't be lost. It's not gonna fall out. Because when you're going over these things, if you're going through papers, you know what can happen to those, right? But if they're in the binder, in a page protector, it's gonna stay put and it's not gonna get lost. So I really recommend you get a legacy binder, which is really a comprehensive collection of all your important documents. Everything, your titles to your car, everything. So how do you create a legacy binder? You gather the information, you organize, and then you communicate where it is, because it's not gonna do any good if they don't know where it is. I have mine in a little safe, and then both girls know the combination, so they know where it is. You have to communicate, and then you have to update it. So it's not one and done. You have to update it as time goes on. You might change some things. You need to have all your personal information. They might not know this. They might not know your full name or some other things. We think they know all this stuff, but they don't. You need to have your personal information. I have my birth certificate in there, my social security number's in there, my little card's there, driver's license picture of my passport, all that stuff is in there. And then people that you're gonna need to contact, your doctor, your financial planner, your lawyer, all those people they're gonna need to contact should be in that. And I know that I think that file from the Veterans Administration sounds like it's all this stuff. So you can put together forms, you can buy little books that have all this information, this detailed information that we might not think about, like what my doctor is, who's my lawyer, all these things. You need to have your legal documents in there, of course, your will and trust and the power of attorney. My will is not in my legacy binder because it's in a separate book. It's in the safe of my daughter. So if it's not in the binder, I have a listing of where the important papers are. But that's about the only thing it's not in. The will and trust are not in the binder. Who your power of attorney is, they should know that. Your healthcare directive should be in there so when you get sick, They can go to your legacy binder, find your healthcare directive, it's right in that one place, and then they can take care of you. Your financial information should be in there, your bank account, your investment accounts. And when you have your bank and your investment accounts, you need to make sure they're the beneficiaries, right? Don't forget to do that, because then they can get it right away as soon as they know you're dead, right? So make sure they're the beneficiaries. A lot of times people forget. I didn't know you're supposed to do that till recently, so mine are there. Any debt information that you have and tax information, make sure you have all that stuff in there so they don't have to look anywhere else. It's all in the binder. Insurance information, your life insurance, your health insurance, your casualty insurance, insurance for your house or for your condo.
I have a question
Yeah.
on this. So much of my stuff now is electronic.
Yes.
So you're saying literally print it all out and put it in there? That could be
What I would
a lot.
do, and what I have done, is I do have it printed, especially with a lot of the original documents, like the titles to your cars and all that stuff. I have it printed in the legacy binder, because it's a simple place to look. I also have it backed up electronically. It's important to back it up too. So I think you do both. I mean, really, if you think about this as like the most important thing you're leaving behind, you don't want to just, take it seriously, you want to get it all put together. So, and this is one thing I forgot about. Probably, my husband died, I had no idea where the titles to the car was, and so now the titles to my car, everything is in there. One thing that's nice about my legacy binder is like when I need stuff, it's there. And it's there. The digital assets that you have, they're all there. And your passwords, all that kind of stuff was in there now. And my husband, his system of filing were in plastic bags in his closet, and the plastic bags looked a lot like trash in the closet. So I had to go through all those plastic bags and find out. And I'm a veteran, and I don't know where my DD 214 is. I'm gonna go as soon as I get home. I'm gonna get that thing put in there, because we get to be buried I gotta get my burial benefits. So all this stuff, these important papers that they'll never know how to find, but it's in there. It's all in there. So my DD4 is going to be in my legacy binder. And also some other things that you don't think about all the time, but like what about your pets? Your safe deposit box, have a key in there. Membership and subscriptions, the things you might want to cancel, and then pet care. Now these younger people, especially, have more pets than we do. But they need to know, where's your pet going to go? Who are you going to name guardian of the pet? And make sure that whoever you name is not going to cause trouble. Remember thinking about that later on if they're going to fight over the pet. Maybe get 2 pets and but the veterinary information, or all these things that are important to put in there that I would never have thought to put in there before for myself. And then the letter of intent or letter of instruction. This is very important, because we're not going to always have things exactly equal, right? And so maybe someone's taken care of you. This person's taken care of me for 3 years and comes over every day and makes me breakfast, and maybe you didn't pay that person to do that, but you want to give that person some extra money in the will. And if you're going to do that, make sure you have a letter of intent and you have some communication, and also you tell them directly some communication, because if it's a surprise, it will tend to cause conflict. Make sure they know about it, or if they're going to leave more money to one person than another. But I would really try to recommend that you try to sit back and think about whatever choices you make, the effect it's going to have on the whole family. Try to think about that, because sometimes we make choices that sound very solid, but can sometimes divide the family up. So just think about that. The letter of intent is not a legal, it's not legally binding, so your will always comes in first. But it's just a personal way you can talk to your family about why you did what you did. And it also kind of shows your voice and wisdom. You can write it in a way that talks about how much you love them and so on. So letter of intent is really important. And have that right in your document. Now, also, I recommend that you can plan your own obituary. And if you're going to plan your obituary, you got to pick out the picture, right? Because I know for my kids, the picture they would pick out would be one when I was like 25. and it would look great, but nobody would know who I was. If they're looking through the pictures on the obituaries and weren't looking at the names and they saw that picture, they'd have no clue who that was. So I'm really recommending that they do one that represents me more, right? And even though they still might not know who I am from this picture, I will have represented myself. This is how I want them to remember me. So pick a picture, like if you're fishing with your kids or you do whatever, pick a picture that will represent you, and that your memories of your kids and your grandchildren who might just say, you never know, but then they say they don't save stuff like we used to, might just save that obituary, or at least save a digital copy of it. And so that will be who they remember. So pick out your own picture if you can. And you can even write your own obituary. You can write, what's important for them to know, because sometimes they don't know things about you. And it eases the burdens on the loved ones. You don't have to write your own obituary, and they can write it too. They can also write an obituary for you. This is just one of the options that you have, and I think we never really thought about this as an option. And you can add humor to it. You can also offer some comfort. And my favorite obituary was Don Weiss. Don Weiss wrote an obituary in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and he was a lawyer, he was a friend of my friend, a friend of a friend, and she gave me the obituary. And he talked about, well, I'm up in heaven now, and he was a ball player, and it looks like we're warming up. Looks like I get to play ball. There's Jesus at the, warming up for me, and I see you all down there, and I love you so much. And he talked about his wife as if she was alive. She had passed on, so he didn't update his obituary. But he was just talking, and what that did, it was like a letter from beyond to his family, because I talked to his family, and they said that gave us so much comfort, because it was like he was okay with dying. He felt he knew where he was going. And he was telling us how much he loved us in his obituary. They got published everywhere. So that was just an amazing thing. So, he describes looking down, his love for his family, and it's like, well, I gotta go, Jesus is warming me up, I gotta get, I'm up. And so it was just a fabulous obituary. And I want to write, I don't know what I'm gonna write, but I want to write something like that. I'll have to find some adventure. And the key elements of an obituary, basically, for you to write or for your family to write, basically your personal information, your life summary, your family, personal stories, and your faith and values. Those are all good things to go into an obituary. But you can make it fun. You can make it your own. There's no set formula. But these are things that you should, a good thing to include. And then, of course, the memorial information. So we talked a lot a couple days ago about all the types of funerals. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you the cliff notes in here. I'm just going to go through this quickly. For those of you that haven't seen, that weren't here the other day, I'm just going to say, you have the traditional funerals, and then you have the living funerals. I'm going to have this at my funeral. This is my husband's son who passed away, and I'm like, okay, I'm up here in heaven with Jim and Eric, and have a good time. So this will be displayed at my funeral. So it's going to probably be I think living and traditional. I think I might go for both. But this will be at one of them, maybe both of them. My husband, Jim, I mentioned before, died twice. On the day of my son's, who had passed away, it's my son's birthday, he was in the tub. He was in hospice now, but he was pretty healthy. He was in a wheelchair, but he was talking, getting around, doing things. His family was over the night before. We're having a great time. And we had a walk-in tub for him because he fell. And I was getting him out of the tub, and I just had to take his oxygen off to put his shirt on, just a minute, less than a minute to do that. And when I took the oxygen off, was getting his shirt on, all of a sudden he just went, and there was no pulse. And there was no breath. And I thought, no, you can't die now. I wasn't expecting him. He was supposed to wait 6 months, hospice, you're supposed to stretch that out, right? And it was such a shock, because he was nowhere near death at that time. I thought, obviously he was. And so, he was DNR, and I didn't give him chest compressions. I knew that you're not supposed to, because you could break his ribs and it would be worse. And he didn't want to go back to the hospital, but I did give him some rescue breathing. I kind of cheated a little bit. I shouldn't have done that, but it was like, oh, gee, I just wasn't ready. I panicked. And nothing happened. No pulse, no respirations. He had completely stopped breathing. And I called the hospice nurse, and she was going to come over. And then I called my daughter, and we were on the phone. I was just crying. Oh, my, he's not, he's good. I was just crying, as you do on the phone when you announce the death of their father. And we're on the phone crying, and all of a sudden, and it was about 20 minutes later, he was sitting in the tub, and he was like this. And all of a sudden, he went, like in the movies, like that. When he did that, and I was like, and I dropped the phone. He's alive. I dropped the phone and ran away. And he was alive. And the nurse was knocking at the door at the same time. She was knocking at the door. So it was like, he's alive. The nurse came in. I'm so sorry for your loss. He's alive. And it was unbelievable. And the nurse, the hospice nurses are just amazing. She took over. She got rescuers to come in. He couldn't move. He was breathing, but he wasn't conscious. And then I thought, okay, now I made him a vegetable because I gave him rescue breathing. So then the guilt, all that guilt, the after guilt that starts setting in. So anyway, she got him into bed, and he wasn't awake at all, but his body was just kind of shot. And so she did all the things, got him intubated, not intubated, but got him all set up in the bed. And all of a sudden he woke up, and he woke up and said, "Why am I in bed? I was just in the tub," And I have to say that what I was hoping he would say is, I went up to heaven and I saw Eric and he said, and he did. But I knew that if he went to heaven and saw my son, he would never come back. So I guess that was why. But anyway, so he just, I mean, it was like nothing. Oh, he was just in the tub and now he's in bed. And so I called all the family over. I called everybody. This was 2020 in August, so I wasn't really supposed to. But I called the whole family. Come on over. You're not going to, you know, he's closer to death. So they all came over. He couldn't really move. You know, he could talk. He was completely there. I don't know how that happened, but his body was, you know, really shot compared to what it was before. And so he was in bed. He really couldn't move. And then everybody came over, and these two are my two nieces, and they're both nurses. And she was in charge of COVID at Presbyterian hospitals in New York City. She's a nurse practitioner, and she just happened to be coming back for a little visit. And so these two, we used to take care of them quite a bit when they were younger. They were plumping him up. He was laying there. Oh, Uncle Jim. Oh, let me get your legs. Oh, Uncle Jim. Oh, let's plump you. Oh, are you okay? He got all the Diet Coke. He wanted everything he wanted. You can see he's drinking a Diet Coke. Everything he wanted. And I called the rest of the family to come over. And we had like a living funeral for him. We all talked about him, what a great thing he did for our lives. And he was able to be there and see it. We had people coming in on Zoom talking to him, including the doctor that says, well, get him to the hospital. Get us. And Jim, nope, I don't want to go to the hospital. So it was a wonderful, wonderful time, and Kathy's going to talk quite a bit about living funerals, but we kind of had one right there in the bed. It was a wonderful, beautiful moment. When he did pass away the next morning, I was at much more peace than I was the day before, because I kind of felt, okay, it's his time. It's his time. So traditional funerals, we all know about that. Jim also had a traditional funeral that was only the third one in 2020, and it was on YouTube, and so lots of people got to see it, so that he had both. Of course, cremation is becoming much more popular. We talked about that the other day, and it's much, less costly. And then the green burials, again, we talked about that the other day, green burial, where it's not embalmed, it's biodegradable, cost effective, you can't put them in the backyard. Just remember that there are laws preventing you from just, digging a hole in your backyard and dumping Uncle Henry in. You can't do that anymore. You have to follow the rules, right? There are rules about burials that you have to do. And some things are not always widely available, so they're highly regulated, but green burial is important too. And then there are many, many other options that you can do. The only one I think was not talked about here the other day was the mushroom suit. Mushroom suit.
What is that?
Well, mushrooms decompose, and mushrooms remove toxins, right? So the mushroom suit is brand new, and Gail knows about this one. The mushroom suit, you put on, it's a suit, it's kind of brown, and it has it's a little decorative, they made it kind of nice. A little hat on there, just shows your face.
You look like black pajamas.
Like pajamas, it's like pajamas.
Yeah.
Like almost like what you have on now, that kind of stuff. So it's a suit, and it's embedded with mushroom spores and also other bacteria that break things down. And the thinking is that even though if you're a green burial and you're decomposing, there still might be some toxin there that might affect the earth. So these mushrooms will do as mushrooms do and remove toxins and bring things down. So the mushroom suit is the only thing I think that wasn't talked about the other day, or maybe I think Kathy said you might not talk about freeze drying your body, but that's also not just. So what was that?
Space.
Or the space. Oh yeah, space burial. If you like, you could take a portion of your cremains and put them in a rocket and send them out to space. So there's space burial too. There's all, it's wild, wild west when it comes to burials. Just about whatever you want. So there's many, many options here. Yeah. So also it's important to think, what do you want on your tombstone? And this is very important. And I was at a school board meeting. I was on the school board back in Farmington, Minnesota, and I was a dentist in town. And so they said, well, what do you want? It's a meeting to kind of bring us all together. And they said, what would you like to put on your tombstone? And so I thought, as a dentist, because I identified myself with my career, I had just been out for a few years, as you do, and I thought, wow, my tombstone, she may be gone, but her fillings live on, and and of course that is not what I would have on my tombstone now. It'd be very different, something more spiritual about my grandkids or something, but you have to think about what you want on your tombstone. And it's important to start to craft those perfect final words, keeping it short and sweet or humorous. This is what people are going to remember you by. So reflect your personality. You can also add a dash of wisdom. But think about what you want on your tombstone. This is something you can put in your legacy binder. By the way, on my tombstone, this is what I want. Now, the other thing that I really am excited about, and there's all kinds of ways to do it, is that you can do a legacy video. Now, I recommend in my church that, in fact, we were doing it with some people, some of my church friends. We just get your phone, and you can do a quick 10-minute video, answer some questions, talk about your life, things you think are important, any advice you might want to pass on. You can just do that right there and then send it to your kids, all done. It's so simple to do. But there are companies out there that will make you like a really fancy video that you can kind of show at your funeral. So, I mean, you can do whatever you want. But I think now with video, we have a video of Jim's mom where she talks about when she was in the Saskatchewan plains and was going to school in a sled, and she had potatoes in her pockets to keep her hands warm, and then she ate them for lunch. Those are such important videos for the family because there's things, we lived before GPS. We know how to read maps.
Yes.
We lived before computers. I mean, there's a lot of things that our kids wouldn't have a clue how to do that we can do now. And you can sit right there. Yeah, right there. That's good. That's a good one. So anyway, so do a little legacy video so they'll remember you. And again, you can make it very, very simple. Just do it yourself, or it can be professionally done. Now, one of the types of legacy videos I like is the interview technique, where you take another member of your family and they interview you. They ask you questions. What was it like when you were young? What was your favorite memory? Tell me about your father. It's kind of nice because then you have an interaction, and that can be done so simply. That was the type of video we have for Jim's mom, and it's a gift from both the parent and the child. It's a gift from both. And now you can just do it. Back in the day, we have ours on like VHS cassettes, and you have to try to get a copy and do. Now you just push a button and it just goes anywhere you want it. It's just amazing. It's amazing the time we live in, right? And the interview can also add some context. Well, I remember, Nana. Let me tell you this. Now, the story for me that's going to be at my funeral was when I had made reservations for my niece's wedding in Bermuda. And it was really expensive, and we really couldn't afford it, but it was my niece, and I needed to do that. And I made all the reservations. I made them non-refundable because they weren't, because it was cheaper that way. And I was driving my car back from another wedding, because when you have 14 brothers and sisters, you got lots of nieces and nephews, right? So I was coming back from one wedding, and I called my sister, and I said, okay, where are you going to be? We're coming. We're going to be there at this one. And she called back and said, Kim, I don't know what to tell you. And I thought, oh, no, they broke up. She goes, no. She said, Stephanie couldn't even call you because the wedding's next year.
What's next year?
And my husband was in the car next to me, and I had made all the plans, right? And I couldn't refund anything. So we had a little talk, and luckily we both screwed up a lot. So it's like, okay, well, I messed up that thing, so now we're even. So we gave each other grace. That's why we were married for 44 years, because we both screwed up.
Did you go to Bermuda?
We went to Bermuda. Well, we had to, because it was all paid for. So we went to Bermuda, and we found out the reason that it was so expensive was they were having the America's Cup there. So we went to the America's Cup with all these rich people. We went to the, we were just going, but they got the hat, we were going to the America's Cup. We didn't know anything about sailing, but like, oh yeah, that's a nice little sail there. We had a ball. We had a ball, and then we did go back to the wedding the next year. We only stayed for like 2 days because we couldn't afford it. We'd spent all our money the first time. So anyway, but that's what they're going to remember. They're going to talk about that. And you know what? We have to be able to laugh at ourselves because they're going to remember what we can laugh about. They're not going to remember any, if you won an Academy Award or Nobel Peace Prize, they don't care. They care that you didn't make you made the wrong trip to Bermuda. That's more fun for them. So let's just go with it, right? So they help you also show off your unique personality. Now, what we did in our families, we have this large family, and we made a video together. And when we made this video together, we had a number of the family members that were younger, and even this is 3-generation video. And you might remember a Geico ad. This is I'm just going to play a couple of clips from it. So,
we love visiting my sister's house, but this trip we noticed something very different. She has a large ant problem.
Oh my! I can see you need a little guy. Here's a hanky. Come ruffle them. Here's a hanky.
Thank you, Aunt Sylvia.
because that's what we did. That's what Aunt Sylvia did, right? And look who's having fun with this. Everybody is having fun. 3 generations having fun. Now, I have been known in my family, along with making plans to go to Bermuda when I shouldn't. I don't think spices that are dry have an expiration date. I don't think they do, unless there's mold on them or something. They're like dried spices. They can last for a long time, right? And my family laughs at me for that, and one of my daughters, when she comes in, like, I tend to notice there's a lot of spices missing when she leaves, because they throw them out. So that's kind of, that's my thing. And then I have another sister-in-law that throws everything out that's expired. So we said, well, let's take that and let's use it. So this is how we did that.
Expired.
You remember that Geico commercial?
Expired. Expired.
Only 2 years. So laugh at yourself. They love that. We put it on YouTube and they were watching it all the time. It's a little bit longer. We have lots of flaws, so we got to highlight quite a few of them. But it's just fun. And then we laugh at ourselves, and then they have fun too. So laugh at yourself. And teach. Oh, then I just kind of put it, make it fun. So we just have a little bit. The other thing is I would recommend is planning a grateful but not yet dead tour. And I planned that with my uncles. I went on a trip after my son passed away, after I stopped being able to work. I had time on my hands, so I went around and visited uncles and aunts that had played a big role in my life as a child. And it was wonderful. One of them was in hospice. He was laying on the bed. He could hardly talk. He looked at me, and he had a little tear coming down from his eye, and his wife had a tear coming down from her eye, and I had a tear coming down from my eye, and he held my hand. And you know, I was able to thank him for taking care of me when I was young. You know, it's important to do that. It's not only good for them, but it's also good for you. So make a list of the influential people in your life and plan a grateful but not yet dead tour. And determine how you can connect. You can surprise them, or maybe bring the whole family in. But plan your grateful but not yet dead tour. It really is something you're gonna love that you did. And also just really be vulnerable when you're planning that trip. Okay, this is one that I planned too. This woman up here is Jean Marie Brown, and she was my 4-H leader when I was a kid. And she was, about 20 years ago, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And this is her whole 4-H group right here. We all came back from all over the country, and we spent a day with her telling her how much I loved her. Here's my daughter, Ashley, who has the 3 grandchildren now, so it was years ago. And that was and it was a wonderful day for her, but it was also a wonderful day for us to be expressing gratitude brings you so much joy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It was a wonderful, wonderful day. So take a look at the people in your lives that made a difference and plan that tour with them. The other thing that I include in my legacy binder are personal wishes and letters. I write letters, final wishes, personal letters, and I write many different types. Legacy letters, dear Mary, you can write, this is what our family's been through, here's the history of our family, or how much I love you. You can write letters to your family members and tell them all the things you really want to tell them. You can pass your wisdom on to them, recommendations to them. Keep it loving. Don't say, I was really angry with you when you don't do anything. Don't do that. That's not good. Keep it loving, keep it up. Because once you die, then that ends. I mean, that's a very painful letter. You were wrong and I'm dying now, so that's the end of the story. Don't do that. That's not good. So keep it something that they love and they're going to keep behind for years. And legacy love letters. I have a legacy love letter to all of my children and grandchildren and my son-in-laws. Now the most famous love letter of all time was written by St. Valentine to be delivered after he died. And look where that went. That was a very famous letter. And so write a letter to your loved ones of Valentine. Include it in your legacy binder, okay? Because that will leave a note after you're gone that tells them that you love them. And it's so important that they know, even after you die, that you love them. And also special occasion letters. I write one for, like, if you get married, if you have a child, all these things. But don't put that in your binder, because they might not get married, they might not have a child, they might not graduate. Give that to a special loved one so they can give it out when needed and hold it back if that doesn't happen, right? You don't want to, I'm so glad you're getting married today. Well, I never got married, so you're just going to make it worse. So just, think about that, and also leave presents. You can leave presents. So leave it with a trusted member of the family. And always remember to update, and communicate where it went. This is my legacy journal. And I would tell you that we talked a little bit earlier about thinking of a family, what happens after you die, and your family doesn't find your stuff and gets in trouble, right? But when I die, because I have this now, my vision, as I vision my family, is they're going to sit down at the table and they're going to open up my legacy binder. And as they open up my legacy binder, they're going to think, oh, Mom loved us She loved us so much. She put this all together for us. We're so glad I had Kim as my mother. But, just in case they don't think that, sometimes they don't get it. Just in case, then they're going to get to the Valentine's. And that's proof. It's, I love you, and I'm so glad you're here. So then they can't miss it, because there's some things you just can't leave to chance. And this is one of them. Make sure they know that you love them. Get the book done, and then have the letters. This is also a time before you go to forgive, apologize, and reconcile. Send them letters of apology. Do you have someone you need to apologize to for something? Send them a letter or call them or do something. Get this over with. If you need to apologize, apologize. Very important. It's very important when you put the relationship in front of your ego. It's hard, but it's important. And there's 3 parts to an effective apology: acknowledge what happened, remorse and sympathy, and restitution, what you're going to do to make up for it. Reconciliation letters can also be sent to them. This is better to be sent out before you die, so you can reconcile, because once you die, you really can't reconcile. So do this before you die. Mend those relationships, be humble, and again, value the relationship more than your ego. That's the key. A couple of things. How do you reconcile? People say, how do I do that? Well, you acknowledge your hurt. You take ownership of your role, and you can forgive them of their part. You don't have to remind them of their role. It's best just, okay, I'm so sorry. I want to have a relationship with you. I'm sorry I did this. And listen to understand, but not to respond, because most of us listen to respond, listen to try to understand, and then communicate with compassion to them. Those are all really important things. And forgive them and look forward to continue the relationship. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this book. I'll get this turned off here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the special reunion that we had. We talked about this before. This person up here was Jim's brother, and they have not talked, sorry about that, they have not talked in more than 20 years. And the day that he died the first time, I called everybody in, and he not only came, but he came with these videos of when they were kids, climbing Mount Whitney, right? And he and Jim were just talking. You could see Jim smiling, because it had always been a problem for him that his brother and he were not talking. And of course it helped his brother out, because he had reconciled before he died. Basically, at the very last minute, so don't wait until this minute, because most people don't die twice, you might, don't wait for this minute. But that reconciliation, I just saw it in Jim's eyes when he died, that he was at peace with this. And again, I can see his brother, and there's no hostility at all there yet. So reconcile while you still can, because you never know, you never know where we're going to go, right? So when you're looking at gifting your children, just think about just not the wealth, but think about the wisdom of your heart, all the strength of your legacy. And remember, one of the most important legacies certainly is love, but also resilience. Try to do what you can to help build resilience in your children and in your grandchildren. Because death comes unexpectedly. We all know that, right? It can come at any time. And you can't assume that you have more time. So I would just like to ask all of you, how many minutes do you have left of your 40 million? How many minutes do you have left? Because the clock is ticking, and the time to get ready is now. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good job.
Awesome.
Questions?
Oh, yeah, well, I got 5 minutes if there's any questions.
Any questions?
Yes.
It only took me 8 months to put together a partially completed legacy booklet. And I got the document from NOLA Press called Get It Together that listed almost all of the things that you said. It took me probably 3 months to find that book before,
Yes,
and I'm a librarian, mind you.
Yeah, it's so important. There are lots and lots of research to do.
I will hear you talking.
No, there's lots of
The people on Zoom can't hear with all the other people talking.
No. She said it took 8 months, And it took her 3 months to find the book, and she's a librarian. So that's why I do it now. Like, start now and just keep working on it until you get it done. Anything else? Yes.
Just the fact that passwords,
Yes.
like you said that, but I mean the password to your phone,
Yes.
where you have all the phone numbers of your loved
Yep.
ones, of your computer. I have my passwords of all the other stuff on my computer, but I also printed it out. And I have to update it because you're always adding passwords because you're going to other websites.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think talking to my kids was a beautiful time. It was just a beautiful time. And we're not done yet. A lot of the things you talk about, I'm not done yet with my husband and kids. That's important.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And she just mentioned that the passwords to her phone and other things were very, very important for the people on Zoom. Yes.
I like to back up all my information on a flash drive.
Yes.
That way I don't depend on the computer or the
Yes.
cloud or anything else.
Yes. Yeah, I have mine. I have the originals are in my book, my legacy book. Everything is in there, so they can get it there, but I also have them backed up. So these are such important papers that if it takes you 8 months to find them all, you don't want to lose them again. So right, you gotta get them all together and have them really safely put away.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yes.
I just want to make just put out there for people like me who are not partnered with no children and very, very little family. I would say 95% of this applies, but there's a whole different
Yes.
emotional component to that. I
Yes.
just did my trust because I moved to New Mexico, and thinking about my sister I have one sister, and my sister is my medical power of attorney, but she's not touching the finances. And so having to make those decisions, and so there's a kind of an addendum to all of this
Sure.
with family.
And if you talk to her about that beforehand,
Oh, she knows.
I think that's really important so that she knows. So it's not like,
How come?
oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really good. But yes, there are a number of people that have no immediate relatives, and it's still the same things apply with the people around you, the people that you love, but it is different. Yes, thank you for that. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say, and of course this is optional, I have my husband and I have our legacy binder, and at the advice of our attorney, any document that would be difficult, if not almost impossible to replace if there was a house fire, those we have in our safe deposit box, and then we have copies of those documents in our binder.
Great.
And in the binder, it lists
Where
where all the originals are.
Yes.
And yeah, because just like you don't know when death will drop by,
Right.
you don't know if a house fire is going to
Yes,
happen.
yes.
Yeah.
And I bought a little safe,
Yeah.
a fireproof safe, so it's a similar thing, but a safe deposit box or a safe, absolutely critical. And I think really, making copies is just a great idea. You just want to keep it safe so nothing happens to it. So yes,
I
it's
have
great.
one thing to say about safe deposit boxes. If you don't have it in your will as to who's designated for that, it becomes part of the state and it's locked up. And it caused my son a nightmare.
Yes, so we did add, both of our trustees, because we have a trust, they actually went into the bank, filled out a signature card, and so they have, they know where we keep the keys, so they have access to the box. But yes, that's an important component.
Because my ex thought, he's making it secure.
Right.
And he actually caused a nightmare for my son.
Yeah.
That's why you got the safe instead, but it just depends on what you're doing, just make sure they have access to it. I
Yes.
think it's a
I
good-
just thought of something, when you said about the fire,
Uh-huh.
the keys to our home safe are in the house.
Oh.
So but our kids lose things, so I don't know.
That is a problem, that's a problem.
Key to, yeah.
That's a problem, yes, that's a problem.
Air tags.
Air tags, there you go. I have an air tag, so they attach it to the key, those air tags. You
What's
attach-
that? I
Okay.
don't even know what that is.
I just put mine in, I don't know if it works, so I'm in that stage too. But their air tags are little tags that you can attach to things like your keys or your suitcases. Yeah, or your cat, right? So that, or you can put it on the collar, yeah. So that if something happens, it's like a GPS for that.
Oh.
So they're really great. I haven't figured out how to use it yet. Kathy Dempsey she's figured out how to use it.
Everything, I have it on everything.
Yeah, I haven't, I'm gonna have to ever come to my house and figure out how it's working for but it's one more thing we have to learn, so.
It notified me when I got here today that I had left 3 things behind in the Airbnb.
There you go.
So,
There you go. And my time is up, but anytime, if you have any questions, you please just ask me anytime. And thank you so much.
Thank you so
This is